Hello, Penny. What's up, Pam? Hey, Min. What's up, Eddie? Christian? Good to see everybody this afternoon. Hope you guys had a good Monday. Good afternoon, Lath. What's up, Ricky? What's up, TP? Michael? Michael W in the house. Thank you. Got my my annual haircut. Probably should get more than one cut a year, but that's what it's turned into. I'm in New York City. I try to have the clean look going on a little bit, and then when I'm out in Idaho, it's like ski bum look all day. That's what I'm going for out there. What's up, Ben? Good afternoon, DJ. All right, let's jump in. I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and a member of FINRA SIPC. All of my trades are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. There's the position disclosure. I'm pretty light. I think this last weekend, I went home lighter than I have, I don't know, in a long time, to be honest. And felt good. I'm back in a little bit of Bank of America. I'm very, very, very small. I'm about as small as I could be in Bank of America. Earnings tomorrow morning. And I did keep a little bit of that Chewy. I'm down in it. It's my worst name today. But it's still within this range on the daily chart, though it's kind of a little bit of a breakout failure on very high volume. Probably would be more prudent if I got out of the position entirely. But I want to manage it a little bit into tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely did not look good. We can take a look at that one. We can take a look at some other ones, but let's start with the market. Really impressive day for the market. SPY's up 0.25%, Q's up 0.8%, IWM up 0.9%. So not a massive performing day for the S&P on a percentage basis, but it's impressive that the market was able to push above yesterday's high, which I described in the morning meeting today as a lower probability situation, and it was able to happen. The SPYs pushed above yesterday's high. They did not quite close above. The Qs, same deal. They pushed above yesterday's high. I don't think that they quite closed above. Yeah, they closed just below Friday's high, but the fact that it was able to get up there at all after putting a shooting star candle in on a day 4 with a pretty healthy degree of extension and then negate it basically the next day, that's like tremendously bullish action. And I'll tell you what else is tremendously bullish action is that we rotated back into the IWM again. I guess here at the end of the day, the Qs are up 0.8% and the IWM is up about a percentage point, so there's not that much outperformance from the IWM compared to the Qs. But especially if you look off the open on the small time frame, this IWM waking up really at 9:45 in a big way with these two positive Maribozus was incredibly impressive with what the Qs were doing at that time. The Qs were pulling back and the IWM was totally breaking out. And this is the same bullish rotation. I feel like I keep talking about the same thing, but it keeps happening over and over and over again. Every time the Qs get too extended, they rest, they pull back, IWM goes. Every time the IWM gets too extended, and you guys can all take a closer look at these different cases when the Qs get too extended and the IWM gets too extended. Every time the Russell gets too extended, they rest for a few days and the Qs take over. We just saw this last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago into last week, and then into today, where the IWM gave the biggest bounce off the July 6th low. Really impressive bounce, right? We bounced from 180.60 to, on the 12th, we put in a high of 193. And I remember us saying on the 12th and on the 13th that like the IWM was almost hitting that point of extreme extension where we'd like to come in on the other side and short. It didn't really do that based on how I look at markets off the space between that 8 and 21 EMA. But you had to keep in mind that we didn't just bounce off the 8 EMA and become that extended. We started significantly below the 8 EMA and even below the 21 EMA to have that run. That was a massive run from 180.70 or so up to 194 in a handful of days. Really big run. The IWM had gotten most extended here on the 12th and the 13th. So of course what happens once the IWM is most extended? They rest. there was actually relative weakness for the Russell on the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th, as they were most extended. It allowed this ADMA to catch up. Particularly on Friday, the IWM was very relatively weak, pulled back to almost 180, which I was looking at as a potential buy spot, but I didn't quite get it. Pulled back to just about the ADMA on the daily chart. And the last 3 days of last week, when the Russell was resting, what are the Qs doing? Boom, three real big upside days, where the Qs coming from that rebalanced data and information when it first came out were really relatively weak for a few days, hanging out in equilibrium. The IWM was exploding and taking higher. And then they switched, and now today I'm like, okay, the Qs are, shooting star candle, relative weakness pre-market, relative weakness after the open, and the IWM just exploded the upside. Eventually the Qs held in and started their upside grind. So I think this is a really impressive day. And the fact that the SPYs and the Qs pushed above Friday's high, even if they didn't close above, the fact that they were able to do that is just, it's still incredibly bullish. The technicals here are super bullish across the board. You absolutely cannot deny that. I really base most of my decision making on my trading based off of technical analysis. I like to describe myself as like 85% technicals and 15% fundamentals. I absolutely think that fundamentals matter. I think fundamentals help you develop a thesis for your expectations for the market, what type of stocks you want to be involved in, what types of sectors you want to be involved in. But the technicals are what confirm it. They give you the entry, they give you the risk management, they give you the reward profile. So I'm looking at the market here that is a bit extended, but is still incredibly bullish. But the fundamentals coming into this earnings season, I talked on it briefly in the morning meeting, are just starting to concern me a little bit, just kind of with where we're at. And I think everyone knows I've been super bullish pretty much the entire year, even in the face of a lot of the sell-side analyst stuff coming from Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan and pretty much everybody on the street over there. We were able to be bullish because the technicals confirmed it, and the market dynamics positioning really confirmed it. And the technicals are still there. They're still absolutely bullish. I'm just starting to get a little bit more concerned. I don't think that the market dynamics are there on the side of the bulls in the way that they had been previously. And we're starting to get a little bit expensive again on some of these metrics, I think. And again, it's just a thought process. It doesn't mean that we can't continue, especially while the technicals are so bullish. But the extra kind of driving force in my thought process is what we saw so far, and we're at the very, very, very early part of this with this earnings season. And I'm really curious to see how the data comes out over the course of the rest of this week, and the next week should be a really big week for earnings. But we had Delta report fantastic looking earnings and totally sell off, and we had some of these banks which weren't as extended, I think, as Delta or some of the growth stocks or even some of the FANG names into these reports, even selling off a little bit. They sold that Wells Fargo back down on Friday on a really good report, though they bought it back up today. They sold JP Morgan off of highs on Friday. So I'm just a little bit concerned coming into this earnings season, and it just has me being a little bit more cautious and being very conscious of when companies are actually reporting, especially with my approach. I'm absolutely down to take good day trades, and I do them every day. But like a lot of what I really like to do, and a lot of what probably makes me more money, is having kind of these core swing positions that I'll be in for weeks or months at a time, and actively day trading around that core position for cash flow each day. And I'm just very cautious right now, right in front of earnings reports, to get into anything that's had like a really big move that I might otherwise want to be in for more than just like a day or two trade. And some of the examples of some of the names that I've been in, I'm all out of them, are Pinterest, is a Roku. A lot of these names have just had huge moves, and even some of the ones that I'm not in, like this Upstart is starting to get ridiculous up here at $54, or even Carvana, which I became pretty bullish on at $8 when that report came out in the beginning of May. I'm looking at this thing at $38, $40, and I'm like, okay, That's like a really, really big move for a lot of these names. I mean, even you could look at a Delta or a Carnival Cruise Lines that have had massive moves. We'll see what these earnings reports look like, and we'll more importantly see what the reaction to the reports look like, which oftentimes is more telling than the report itself. So I'm just at a spot here where I'm recognizing that these market technicals are extremely bullish. I'm also recognizing that we're up like 40% on the year in the NASDAQ or something like that, and I'm very cautious that we might see a lot more examples of sell the news, even if it's a decent report, into this earnings season, similar to what we saw with Delta. So my plan here really right now is just to be pretty cautious here in the beginning of this earnings season. I've even thought about trying to do something with options, like buying some puts into some of these reports, which it's never been my game. I personally would consider it to be gambling, but it is, somebody, I think it was Eddie Vick last week, asked me about, I think it was UNH prior to the report, like the day before the report. And if anybody ever wants to ask me about something going into their earnings report before it's reported, my answer is pretty much always going to be the same. It's going to be, I have no idea. I have no idea what the numbers are going to look like. I have no idea how that report's going to be. And even if I knew what they look like, I would have no idea how the stock would react to it. The only thing I would say that I have seen with some degree of consistency over the course of my career on both the upside and the downside is when you've had really big moves in one direction going into the report, that the reaction to the report tends to be in that other direction. Where if you had a really big up move into an earnings report and that report is just okay, it's just like in line, that the stock has a higher probability of selling off on that than it would otherwise. And that the opposite's also true. When they've really heavily sold a stock down into a report and that report comes out and it's just okay, it's roughly in line, there's a much higher probability that stock actually gets bought up. That's like the only real consistency I've ever seen with earnings reports, and it's nothing that is consistent enough that I would feel confident to say that I have a real edge on. It might just be that I could use like options contracts to actually gamble into some of those reports, because for me that's what that is. And again, I'm thinking about, like, how can I take advantage, and this is really the one spot where I think options have an advantage over equities, is going into these kind of more binary events where you know exactly what your risk is because you have options. If you just short some Roku equity because it had a really big move into the report, and the thing happens to rip up to $95 because it's stellar, or just watch out if you're actually short the stock itself. So it's something I'm toying around with in the back of my brain. We'll see whether or not I actually do it. I don't trade options. But that's pretty much it, I think, from the big picture of the market. Just a really, really impressive day. How to gamble. Just a really impressive day on the market overall. As far as some of the individual names that were on the list, I think it was a pretty solid list. I mean, we mentioned, even though I didn't write it down, we mentioned that Apple was by far the best looking of the FANG names for today's trading session. That if there was any one of these stocks that I would look to be long for today, it would be Apple. And Apple just gave a phenomenal move, great move off the open, never broke that opening low, trended higher throughout the day. We talked about Pinterest as actually a perfect example of a stock that I would almost prefer to have a little bit of gambling short exposure into the report, because the thing off that last report, which was an okay report, but they sold it. It's gone from 2050 to 3050 on like no real new news, just general market strength, and had a beautiful bull flag in front of a massive resistance level here at 29. This is one where into the report I don't want to have stock, honestly, to the long side, but for like a day trade or a few day trade, buying the break at $29 in Pinterest today just looked absolutely phenomenal. So that trade worked out really well. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved in either of those. I went after this other idea I had, which was Chewy, which just was a complete failure. Stock pre-market was trading up at about $40, which is a big breakout spot for the stock. It got upgraded by Goldman, so I should have known better, because I mean, I've seen with incredible consistency, and I will not get into any conspiracy theories, especially publicly on something that's being recorded. I've seen with incredible consistency over the course of my career that stocks move in the opposite direction of Goldman upgrades and downgrades, and I'll let you guys be the conspiracy theorist on it. It's just been incredibly consistent. But I try not to be a conspiracy theorist, so I'm looking at Chewy. I'm like, all right, what are my layers of probability here? Stock has shown great relative strength because because of the upgrade. It's also in the news. It's going to be in play because it got upgraded. Pre-market this morning, the strongest sector, if you even want to call it a sector, that I was able to identify this morning was growth. So I'm like, all right, I got a positive and it's got a 15% short float. I'm like, all right, I got a positive catalyst in a heavily shorted stock that's set to open up at the breakout level, albeit it'll open up a little bit extended in a strong market environment. If anything, the thing that I was most worried about today going along Chewy was that the market was going to be weak and pull against me, and the market was actually strong. And I've also got relative strength kind of from the sector. For the most part, the growth names today were just incredibly strong. So really thought I had a lot lined up with this thing, and they just absolutely dumped it. So thank you, Goldman. Absolutely dumped this thing, starting right before the bell. They ripped it down from 40 to open it up at 39.50, and then these opening bars here were just completely brutal. Luckily, my sizing on it wasn't too bad. I did have a not so great kind of heavier follow-up entry at around $38 into the gap fill, looking for kind of a quick oversold bounce, and they just continued to absolutely demolish it further. I took another bigger buy at around 37.25. That saved me a little bit, and then was kind of using that as my stop loss going forward for the day, because I had a more legitimate pivot point once this bounce came in, and they bounced it back pretty good, but then it almost seemed like it was just pinned around $38 for the rest of the day. Incredibly relatively weak, considering that it got upgraded, and growth across the board was very strong this morning and throughout the day. You got ARC, which I like to just type up as a proxy for growth, up 2.25% today, and then you could just start going through a list of names that you could type up. I mean, Upstart today up 14%. I don't think there was any catalyst for this at all. Or Roblox, which I am in, up 3.5% today. You could look at even like a Lucid up 5% on the day. Just one after the next of growth names. Roku, which is actually a weaker one, up 2.5% on the day. So you pretty much could have closed your eyes and blindly bought any growth stock today and made decent money for yourself, as long as it wasn't the one that was upgraded by Goldman at a breakout level with a large short float. So that was unfortunate, and I was more annoyed than anything about that. down a decent chunk of change at this thing at the end of the day. Decided to keep a little bit of it, and like I said, this was probably the difference between me having a great day P&L wise versus a good day. Did I say that right? I had a good day. It would have been a great day if I wasn't down anything in Chewy. So that pretty much kind of covers my day. That Chewy was a big part of my focus. I did trade a little bit of Carvana, kind of as just like a day trade scalp, and I was not very aggressive with it, and decided after I was in it that I didn't love it very much. Buy the ticket, take the ride. I did still follow through with that because my initial game plan wasn't aggressive. I got in to watch it, and I added a little bit into this pullback, and I just did not like the price action on it, so I kept it pretty unaggressive. Liquidated my entire position at $39.75 into this pop, and I never looked back. I did actually make a couple dollars short Upstart, which, again, I did it very conservatively. I did it very small. My P&L on it is pretty small. But shorted this thing when this thing was getting up to this, like, 53.50 area, and caught this pullback. I got all out by 42.75. Just kind of a quick little 15-minute equilibrium pullback in an incredibly strong stock. Just got to be careful with that stuff. And I did it very small. Made a couple dollars long Unity today that I got back into and then got out of. Made a couple dollars long Lemonade today that I got into. And this, by the way, more examples of incredibly strong growth stocks. Unity up 4% today. Lemonade up 8% today. So I got into and out of those names on the long side. Made a couple bucks on it. So again, as long as you weren't in Chewy or I guess ESTC, growth was really where it was at today. Just incredibly strong, along with the IWM strength. Josh had a fantastic early call out in this XBI. It got boring in the afternoon, but Josh called this thing very early, I think on like the first or second 5-minute bar of the day. That was another great call out that I was not involved in today. So overall, I think it was a pretty good trading session. My swing names honestly paid me more than anything today and helped me out a lot. My day trading was decent outside of Chewy. So we'll see how that plays out. I kept a little bit. It's probably a mistake. This does not look good. You have a heavy failure on big volume here on an upgrade. It's the biggest volume candle that's had in a while, but it's still stuck within this range. So I figured within the confines of this range, maybe versus today's low versus $37, I can keep a little bit and see if I can, work my way out of this position with a little bit of a better result than where I'm at as of today's close. But got to be very conscious of your risk if you're doing that. Generally, what I recommend to people is to only keep swing positions if they're in your favor at the close. And if it's against you, you really got to make sure that you're sizing and that your risk is appropriate. Because that's a very dangerous game. You really do not want to be playing the let me risk my account to get back to break even game, because that's a recipe to be a failed trader eventually something's going to get you. If you're trying to average down until you can make it all back and get out break even. That's called unlimited risk for zero reward. It's the opposite of what a successful trader needs to do. So that is all I've got for you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm not seeing anything in the VTF, so feel free to populate any questions that you guys may have. I'll jump over to the YouTube here on a different screen, see what that looks like. Awesome. YouTube, give yourself a thumbs up too. It doesn't make any sense, but sure, why not? From Robert, YouTube, what does it exactly mean rebalancing of the big 7 names from the Qs? What can we expect from individual names and the Q index? Sure, so I think you're a little late on the move on that now, because it's already been fully priced in, I think, to the market since it was first announced, which was Monday last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to remember here. Look at these charts. I think it was announced coming into the trading session of the 5th is when that was announced. And as a result of that, if you look at these days, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, sorry, the 6th, the 7th, the 10th, you had a lot of relative weakness in basically the big cap tech stocks, and that held the Qs down. So you can compare, I remember on the, I guess it was the first day it was announced, which I think was the 5th, Brant saying to me that we should be long QQQE versus QQQ. Because you're gonna get market dynamic buying, forced buying in every single stock that's in the Qs, with the exception of the biggest 7, right? Which is gonna be forced selling. So that rebalance will create a move higher in the QQQE versus the QQQ. And we even saw that to some degree. I think it had a secondary effect that enabled the IWM to be very strong and the RSP to be strong compared to the SPYs. At this point, I think that's already priced in. So I think you need to have it or not. So that's my thought process for you there on it, Robert. From James John, how do you join my trade desk? Email me. Feel free to email me at d.oldensmith@t3trading.com. My first initial, my last name, d.oldensmith@t3trading.com. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about getting involved with the team. From from Michael W. on ZS. How does ZS look for a swing? Some of these names recovered really well. The one that I was eyeballing was CrowdStrike today. Though I see CrowdStrike tailed off a little bit off of its highs. So you had negative news from the competition realm come out on the 12th that was related to Microsoft that hammered down CRWD. It really hammered down ZS. It kind of hit all these types of stocks. I think ZS was probably the worst affected. So very impressive that the market was able to negate that. It's always a very bullish signal, actually. When you have negative news impact something, you get a high volume negative Maribozu on news, and the market's able to negate that. That's actually a very bullish sign. So I think that ZS looks really good. I wouldn't personally buy it here. I'm not going to buy it here. I want to get through the earnings report. This is just another one that's had a, look at this move from 85 up to 165 before this little pullback. So I think if you're already in it, the fact that it negated the candle from the 12th, you should be very happy about. Stick with your trade. I think if you're not already involved in it and you're looking at it, I probably would be a little bit patient at this point with the name. So hope that helps, Michael. Just the same thought process I have on a lot of the stuff yet that's had these really big moves as we come into this earnings season. Anything else, gang? I'm happy to do a short one today. We don't have too much to talk about. No real earnings names today because it was Monday. Earnings season is about to kick off. Just as a reminder, as a general rule in earnings season, I think it's best to trade in the direction in which the stocks are moving and not try to really fight them counter trend, counter momentum on new news events. It's much easier just to be with it, but we'll take that as it comes throughout the next few weeks. So if no one has anything else, I'm happy to wrap things up a little bit. Schwab tomorrow should be interesting. We'll see. I think that historically this is always an incredibly boring stock, and all the regional banks have been really, really boring as well. So we'll see if this wakes us up. I think Bank of America will be a little bit more interesting, at least for me. We'll see. I'm bullish on this BAC into the report, but again, I have no idea how it's actually going to go. Totally gambling. So we'll see. As Josh would say, bagel to the head, I'm bullish. All right, gang. I'm going to wrap it up there. Have a fantastic night. I will see you all tomorrow.